Welcome to the May 19th council meeting. We are holding this meeting at the City of Yakima City Council Chambers. I will let's go over to Tony Doan, our chair.
Hey, welcome everyone. Okay, welcome everyone.
Sorry, I got a bad echo and I can barely.
All right, excellent. Okay, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and start our council meeting today. We'll start with a roll call.
All right, Chell Anderson,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Justin Bourgeault. Forgive me if I butchered that. Micah Chappelle,
I am here.
Tony Doan,
Here.
Damon Doyle,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Roger Haringa,
Roger won't attend or he'll be late.
okay. Matthew Hepner,
Here.
Craig Holt,
Here.
Ty Menser,
Here.
Pete Reekie,
Here.
and Caroline Traub. All right, just to check those again, I got Justin Bourgeault. I don't see in the room. Roger Haringa, you said is going to be late, and did I miss? I got Pete Reekie as well. Okay. Oh, and Katie Sheehan. I apologize.
That's okay here.
All right. Next for the ex officio members, Keith Goner or Gaynor. Lauren Lathrop,
He'll be late.
John Lovick, Alex Ramel,
Good morning.
Linda Wilson, Dirk Merbichtal,
I'm here, Dustin. Thank you.
and then we got staff. I don't need to call roll call for them, correct?
No.
Gotcha.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would like to be recognized? Kevin Russell, go ahead.
I'm not hearing Kevin if Kevin is talking.
Kevin, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that I have an opportunity to address the council later on. I'm a member of the building community and I understand what everyone's trying to accomplish with some of these new code changes, as I'm retired law enforcement and I've spent a lot of time fighting wildfires. And also I helped to start Built Green of Washington. So really, I want the opportunity to address you when it comes up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, Larry Andrews, Andrews Mechanical. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Jed, go ahead.
Good morning, Jed Sherman with the IATMO Group.
Okay, welcome, Jed. Andrea?
Yeah, good morning, Andrea Smith, Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thank you. And Alice?
Alice Lockhart, 350 Seattle, interested in commenting on the same topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler, go ahead.
Tyler Burbidge, RJ Development, Trustwood Construction, also would like an opportunity to provide public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be recognized? Claire, go ahead.
Yes, I also would like to comment on the same topics mentioned previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, go ahead.
Richard Vogt, I'd like to comment also.
Okay. Kim, go ahead.
Kim Barker with King County Permitting.
Okay, welcome. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, Michael Courier with Sigma Drafting and Design. Would like to make comment later as well.
Okay. Deepa, go ahead.
Thank you. Deepa Sivarajan from Climate Solutions. Just a clarification question. Is it required for folks who are commenting on the later agenda item to now introduce themselves? Because I know there's some folks who might be coming to the meeting later.
No, this is just a welcome and introduction for those that would like to be recognized by the public. You do not have to state your reason for being here. Thank you.
Should have said that in the beginning. Oops.
I think we're clear now. Most of us were from the start, I think. Ardell, go ahead.
Oh, wow.
Ardell Jalla, building official, City of Seattle.
Okay, welcome, Ardell. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be recognized? Okay. That concludes our welcome and introductions. Let's go ahead and review and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Damon.
I'll second that.
Okay, second from Chell. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Okay, at this time, we'll be going into executive session. The council will now meet in executive session to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation to which the agency is or may be a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency as allowed by RCW 4230-110, Section 1, subsection I. The council will be in executive session until 10:38. The council is expected to take further action following the executive session.
You need to leave the regular session and click on the link for the executive session.
And did Annette send that to us earlier?
I sent you the links for the executive sessions, I think last week.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to. You're going to the computer.
All right, the council is extending the executive session for a period of 10 minutes until 10:48 a.m. Okay, that concludes our executive session. I call the regular meeting back to order.
Microphone on your personal computer.
Call this meeting back to order. Dustin, will you please do a roll call?
Yes, Chell Anderson,
Present.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Justin Bourgeault, Micah Chappelle,
I'm here.
Tony Doan,
Here.
Damon Doyle,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Roger Hiringa, Matthew Hepner,
Here.
Craig Holt,
Here.
Ty Menser,
Here.
Pete Reekie,
Here.
Katie Sheehan,
Here.
Caroline Traub. And then for ex officio members, give me one moment here. I got too much stuff on my screen. Representative Keith Gaynor,
Here.
Lauren Lathrop, Senator John Lovick, Representative Alex Ramel,
Here.
Senator Linda Wilson, and Dearmere Bechtal.
I'm here. Thank you.
And that concludes roll call. We have a quorum once again.
Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and go into the review and approval of the minutes. Before we jump into that, I do just want to mention for members of council, as well as the public that's joining us today, that the meeting today is scheduled from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have a hard stop at 4 p.m. Due to broadcasting scheduling that's available at our on-site. So please keep that in mind during public comment. Refrain from repeating comments that have already been stated. And just respect the council's time frame as far as that goes. Thank you. Okay, before we go into review and approve the minutes, we'll open it up for public comment. Okay, Larry, go ahead.
Second.
One sec, Larry. Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on the minutes. I don't think the minutes make an accurate representation of what happened at the last meeting. And the comments come from what I expressed and what later was expressed by the council's attorney. It was clearly evident that on item 4 of the April 21st agenda, that there was no public comment allowed to be taken, even though it was check marked. And then the attorney went into a great oration of that if it's not check marked, you don't have to do anything. Well, that's correct, but that was not the case with what happened last April, okay? And also item 10, there was no public comment and it was check marked. And also both of those, there was votes taken on them, okay? And so Derek's representation of what he put there, I mean, I think it's poor at best of what he wrote. And here's the reason why. I mean, all of you go through OPM training. All of you know what the OPM laws say, but yet this council continually defies the OPM law, okay? And for Derek to say that it's okay to follow the law sometimes, but not others, is not good, okay? And so the record needs to be changed, okay? Because the record in writing doesn't represent what happened. And it's the only time where the public can go back and reflect on what was said and written. And when the public doesn't have a chance to do that, then they get ran over. Thank you.
Alice, go ahead.
Sorry, is now the time for testimony on issues before the council?
This would be comments related to the review and approval of the minutes from the April meeting.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Alice. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing no hands. Okay, with that, we'll open it up to council. Micah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if there were any recommended changes from Larry, or was it just to speak about what was omitted? Would he like to have us modify the record on item 4 and item 10 to indicate that there was no public comment taken on those two items?
Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely like to have that happen, that the public was held out of testimony on those items, and that those items probably should be readdressed at another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I'm not sure if we would want to change it to where the public was held out. I'm not sure it was intentional to not be allowed to have public comment on those items. It just may have been that it was not taken or overlooked. So I'm, if that's the case, I would look, we could change the minutes to indicate that no public comments were taken on those items, and that would be the addition to those two items only. So I would need to modify the motion for that.
Excuse me, Tony, do you mind if I jump in real quick on this?
Go ahead, Derek. Go ahead.
Just for the record, I don't agree with several of the statements or conclusions that Mr. Andrews made. And we could certainly have a conversation later if folks want to have an overview, or be provided an overview for the requirements under OPMA with regard to public comment. That aside, I think I would suggest that if we are proposing to make changes to the minutes to reflect the concerns that Mr. Andrews has identified, I think I would ask that I have an opportunity to review them, given the suggestions Mr. Andrews made that there may have been violation of the OPMA, and that we want to confirm that the changes that are being made to the minutes actually conform to the recorded meeting, and double check that. So that would be something that I would suggest before any substantive changes are made.
Just to clarify that these minutes, they're not verbatim, these are summary minutes, so not everything is there.
That's a good point.
Anything further, Micah?
With Derek's recommendation, would that be appropriate to make a motion to table the minutes until that review can be done, or table the minutes until the next meeting?
Okay, let's take.
I'm just asking if that's appropriate. I'm not making a motion. I'm just asking Derek if that would be appropriate, if that's what he would like to do, is review the minutes to capture those items correctly.
Well, the motion that's on the table is to approve, so there would have to be an amendment to that, and there would have to be a specific recommendation on that. And I guess the only thing I'm saying is if somebody's prepared to make that, that's fine. It's up to the council how you want to do that. But I just want to be careful about, writing specific text right now for the minutes in light of this conversation.
Sure, that's all we're discussing. So I appreciate it, Derek.
Chell, go ahead. You're muted.
I would like to make a motion to table the minutes and request that Mr. Andrews submit written comments to the Code Council, and that Derek and staff have a chance to review those and provide a potentially revised version of the minutes at our next meeting. That's a motion to table.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Who was the second by?
Second was by Craig Holt. Motion was made by Chell Anderson. Okay, with that, we'll open that up to discussion. Katie, would you like to comment on that?
No, I think that's fine, actually, given the motion. Thanks.
Okay, Chell, would you like to speak further to your motion?
I think I guess the reason is there's a public comment that I think needs addressing, but I think we need written things in order to approve anything. So I don't want to wordsmith today. So I think the only option really for us is to table it, accept any written comments on it, and potentially revise the minutes based on that.
Okay, Craig is the second. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I think Chell's done a great job summarizing.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against?
Nay.
Okay. Dustin, please do a roll call.
Chell Anderson,
Aye.
Jay Arnold,
Aye.
Todd Bayreuther,
Aye.
Micah Chappelle,
Aye.
Damon Doyle,
Aye.
Tom Handy,
Aye.
Matthew Hepner,
Aye.
Craig Holt,
Aye.
Ty Menser,
Nay.
Pete Reiki,
Aye.
Katie Sheehan,
Katie,
Sorry, I said aye.
motion passes.
okay, motion carries 10-1. Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item number 5, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. So if there's any public comment, please raise your hand. I'll be reviewing the attendees list, and I will call on you in order that you raise your hand.
Hi there, Andrea Smith from the Building Industry Association. We would like to have an official response from the council to the letter that was sent on Monday by our legal council. If that is able to be addressed today, that would be fantastic and greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Kevin, go ahead.
Yes, and I just want to make certain this is the time to give testimony on the upcoming code changes.
As long as it doesn't apply to any other items on the agenda, this would be the appropriate time.
Okay, then I'll look for you, sir, to stop me if I'm out of line, and I apologize ahead of time. Again, I introduced myself as Kevin Russell. I am a builder here in the state of Washington. I have the distinction of being the 2018 Builder of the Year for the state of Washington. I helped start Built Green in the state of Washington, and I was the charter chair in Clallam County. I live on the Olympic Peninsula. I don't know if my camera's working for council. I walk the walk and talk the talk. This is my PUD bill for 2 houses, cost me $8.48 average a month for energy. And I know we're talking about energy code and we're talking about WUI today. I have here the WUI and the WAC. And I'm asking council please to consider delaying taking action on some of the energy code. You'll hear further testimony from other people, and the WUI and the WAC, as it is very confusing. And my people, including our elected officials, my engineer, my designer, we need more time to understand this. If this comes out in July, I don't know what we're going to do. That's one point. The second point is a lot of these changes are going to add so much money to the cost of a house. We're being charged with building affordable, attainable housing, and it is going to be very hard. We need time to look at this, to understand it, to work with the manufacturers, and figure out ways to accomplish that. As I said earlier, I'm retired from law enforcement. I have been in massive fires. I live down in California. I've been in fires where people were killed. My best friend who got me into building in the 70s, he built a home in Sonoma County and he lost his home to a wildfire, and he did everything possible. So I contend that a lot of what is being addressed here is in the land of diminishing returns. In a couple other points on vegetation, when we started building here and trying to green build, we talked about low impact development. And now we get into, okay, we're going to have defensible zones. So we need to work together, everybody, all of us. I think we all have the same goal in mind, and that's safety and the lowering of our energy needs. But if you would please see forth to delay this, and I myself as a builder and been doing it for 20 years, for a good year, maybe 2 years, and let us all work together. Let us work with the State Building Code Council. We have representatives from the Building Association are there, and representatives from WABO and that. Let us all work together towards one common goal. And in the interest of time, I won't continue on because I have a laundry list of things that are very concerning, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Claire, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the time to comment. My name is Dr. Claire Richards, and I am a nurse scientist here on behalf of Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility. We are here to ask you not to delay building code changes such as requiring heat pumps and higher ventilation rates for gas stoves in new buildings. We are experiencing a rapidly deteriorating climate that threatens public health and safety, and these building codes are needed to save lives. The heat dome of 2021 killed hundreds of people, largely due to indoor temperatures. And scientists agree that the El Nino weather is going to push the temperatures even higher, and our buildings in the Pacific Northwest are largely built like greenhouses without sufficient AC. We do not have time to wait anymore. Delay tactics have been used for far too long. Rapidly installing heat pumps in new buildings and increasing ventilation of stoves is critical. We no longer have a spring season anymore. People in Washington are already experiencing heat waves and wildfire smoke in May. Fossil fueled climate breakdown is intensifying and prolonging the wildfire season. One of our primary public health strategies for reducing exposure to hazardous wildfire smoke is to ask people to stay inside and close their windows and doors. But without sufficient ventilation on stoves, exposure to indoor air pollution from gas stoves will only increase. The pollutants from burning gas affects our lungs, hearts, brains, kidneys, causes stillbirth, preterm birth, and premature death, and especially asthma. Decreasing exposure to pollutants in the home, such as by increasing ventilation requirements, has the potential to save lives and tremendous healthcare costs over the coming decades. Please do not delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Larry Andrews, go ahead.
Yeah, in the short time that I've had to review some of this code, table C407.3, 1, carbon emissions factor is wrong. And that was alerted to you during the tag process. It was confirmed that it was wrong in the fall and that changes would be made, and it's still not made. And I don't blame the staff. I blame the council for this, is because the council isn't giving directives to the staff of what needs to be done and giving the staff the time to do what needs to be done. And then this week, I was in a class for RVF, refrigerant variable flow systems. Okay. I was forced into this class because of all the failures we're having of these systems, and I was brought in to fix the problem. And when I went to the class, it was very enlightening to me as these systems are built. The drawing of all the piping has to be done as it's going along. And then the as-built, when it is done, has to be at the job site, because that's how the charge is put into these systems by the piping drawing. Anytime you have any change from the original piping drawing, you have to run it through a computer program and re-verify if the piping will work. Okay. And so these systems, they're good systems when everything works right. But when things don't work right, it costs tens upon tens of thousands of dollars to fix these systems. And what are we going to do when we put these systems in? And then in the next year or so, we're going to have a refrigerant change. Okay, so all these systems that are being put in, they won't work with the new refrigerant. So they're all going to have to be ripped out at some point, because they're not going to be able to work with the new refrigerant. That's a requirement. Okay. Loss of charge. If you have any leak in these systems, and I'm hope Stoen can put on the view of what I emailed him the other night, so you can see the complexity of what you're asking these people to install. Okay. I emailed it to Stoen so you can see. And I'm hoping he can put that up on the video. I think it's very enlightening to see what the complexity, and this is just one 8-zone box, okay? And if you look at all the heads and all the electronics that are in this, and then the manufacturer tells you that, if you can move it up and down, Stoyan, the manufacturer tells you that you can put that box within 4 inches of the ceiling, okay? So you tell me at 4 inches from the ceiling how a technician can go inside that box, look for a leak, or change out any of those motorized valves, okay? They're stepper valves, okay? If we're gonna go to this type of system, we really need to sit down with the tag and give direction of how these systems are going to be installed, so they can at least be serviced for these clients that are going to be out there. This is just one box, and you would have multiple of these boxes, okay, in one of these systems. You might have 5, 6, 7 of these boxes in a system, okay? Now, the technology is really advanced. And so the people that have to work on these systems have to be advanced. If you lose any charge in your system, there's no way to put a set of gauges on it and tell you what's going on. You have to have your computer hooked up to the system to realize what's going on, okay? And if you've lost charge, you have to take all that charge out because of the 410A that we're running. 410A, if you lose a charge, the components in the 410A become out of balance and you don't know what component has left. So you're required to pull all that charge out of that system and then recharge with new, okay? Very expensive, very, very expensive. In fact, the customer I'm working with right now has spent over $50,000 and now they're bringing us involved into this system, okay? And I want you to, I think it is drastically important that we get a tag together and look at what we're installing and put provisions in to allow actual service ability to be put into these. But I think the council needs to look a lot further down the line than jamming these systems in by what they're trying to do right now, is because of the refrigeration change that's going on. All these systems that we're putting in, they all have a huge global warming potential of refrigerant in them, and they're all going to change. And now you've put in a system in a lot tighter ceiling than what you ever had before. And so you're going to have to come back with some type of similar system like this. It'll all have to be repiped in the building. That means taking down the ceilings, taking down the walls, and redoing all this stuff, because these systems life expectancy is probably 10 to 15 years. The systems we're working on that are failing right now are in the 8 to 7 year range. Okay. And because the contractor didn't go through all the processes, they don't have any warranty past a year. Okay. And that's what happens out here. But the real sad portion of this is, let's say we have, like you have downtown, a 30-story building or a 20-story building, and you've sold all these apartments to people. And guess what? These people think that they're going to have a system for a long time, because traditionally with a 4-pipe system with 2 decks, you have a little problem here and there, but you don't have to totally rebuild the whole thing. I mean, the whole system would probably last hundreds of years, but this system's going to be obsolete in a year or two. Okay. And right now is not the time to be forcing these systems upon us. Once we make the refrigeration change and the product's proved out better, then we can go to a change like this. But we've got to give the people in the classes the ability to service these systems. Putting this box 4 inches from the ceiling, I would say a minimum of 2 feet from the ceiling if you actually have to go up there and work on this thing. And this is reality, is what's happening right now. And so we have to yank the whole box out and lower it so we can actually figure out what's wrong. I mean, the expense of this, you guys have no idea. And I tried to explain this to you in the tag process, but I got shoved down. But the reality is, and I'm not the only guy, every person in those classes talked about what the expense was to try to get these systems back online. And most of them don't even have a piping diagram. Without the piping diagram, you have no idea how much the charge has to go in. And the whole system is based off the piping diagram. And then the way it's piped. I mean, our system had all the Y fittings that go to all the heads, the indoor heads, the cassettes. They were all put in the wrong position and took the compressors out. Not one compressor, took 3 compressors out. Okay. These systems have to be put in a certain way, and they probably will function fairly good. But if you have to work on it, you've got to have the room to do it. Okay. Many of the people in my class,
Larry,
okay.
Larry,
Thank
you're
you.
getting repetitive. Thank you. Thank you. Tyler, go ahead.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
It appears some of these comments are part of agenda item 8, which includes, at least in the documents, the delay of the code. So I guess I'm,
Agenda item 8 is other business, and
okay,
it's not, there is no specific to agenda item number 8. Part of the justification to putting documents in that relate to the delay is because in the last meeting, some of the letters that were sent very late notice, and they did not have time to be posted to the agenda, and there was a request from a council member to have them included. And so that's why they are on this agenda, but that does not mean number 8 for sure includes that portion of it. So that's
Okay.
why those comments will be entertained now.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Tyler, go ahead.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Tyler Burbidge. I am a lifelong Washington resident and a project manager at an Olympia-based residential development construction firm. My educational background is in community development, planning, and professionally I've specialized in regulatory compliance associated with residential development and construction. I want to speak on 2 items today. First, the lack of economic impact analysis completed during proposal, review, and approval of the 2021 building code. And second, the ill-prepared nature of the building industry as a whole to adhere to the approved code language. I hope at some point in this meeting is that a member of your council will motion to postpone implementation of the 2021 building code until November of 2023 or later to allow time for reconsideration of the code's economic impact and for Washington's building industry to be prepared to adopt the code. In our industry, it has been our trial over the last several years to provide right-priced housing for residents in Washington's communities that is both energy efficient, safe, and affordable. Many bills passed during this last legislative session that aim to make housing more affordable for Washington residents. The 2021 building code is currently approved will significantly add to the already teeming list of factors that contribute to the increased cost of housing in our state, directly negating any progress made recently by the legislature. The economic impact of implementing the 2021 building code, including the 2021 residential energy code and approved changes to the wildland urban interface in its current state, has not been satisfactorily analyzed. In looking at most of the TAG proposals that were approved, they did not provide any analysis of economic impact of the proposal that was complete and substantive. At a time when housing affordability is one of our state's most preeminent issues, how can it be that economic impact is not an absolute priority during review and approval of the proposed codes? Additionally, I recently sat through a 4-hour training session on the 2021 building code presented by BIAW. I walked away from that training session in disbelief of some of the approved changes and the lack of answers from building officials in attendance on basic general questions related to implementation and compliance that impact not only just building of these homes, but also the platting, subdivision process, and sale of the homes. From architects and drafters to plans examiners and inspectors, suppliers and tradespeople, no one I've spoken with is prepared to adhere to the code as approved. Most of them, a vast majority of them, are unaware of the stringent requirements of the wildland urban interface, the base requirement for continuous wrap exterior insulation now required under the new code, and specific heat pump requirements that require the location of the heat pump within conditioned space or not. That's a confusing element of the code at this point. There is no doubt that there will be a damaging slow in building, if not a complete halt within months of code implementation. It is our understanding that by your negligence to assess economic impact of these changes and failure to provide a consistent usable code, you are creating a construction environment in Washington state that puts local family contractors out of business, that makes new housing an unattainable asset for 76% of Washingtonians, that adds a heavy load to the already overburdened review processes at jurisdictions across the state, adding time and cost to new construction. The legislation I referred to earlier aims to solve that burden and would require the jurisdictions to reimburse applicants for delays in their projects. I would ask that you please motion to suspend implementation of the 2021 building code until ample research and analysis can be completed and documented. As those required to adhere to those codes that you approve, we stand ready to help. We appeal to your authority to make that motion and make the approval. But we aim to provide real-time feedback and work in collaboration to find a path forward together. Thank you.
Jeff, go ahead.
My name is Jeff Keller. I'm Executive Director for the Western Wood Preservers Institute. I wanted to kind of echo also for just specifically for the WUI codes, asking for a delay in that. We are very concerned about the implementation of that, how will be done. We're also concerned as the representatives for preserved wood industry. Some of the wording in it is not even feasible, such as the difference. It seems to equate that preserved wood is the same as fire retardant treated wood, and those are two very different things. And we feel that if the code is enacted as is, it can cause a lot of issues with outdoor and deck building. And so we're very concerned and asking for that to be delayed so that can be gone over and implemented so we don't see these massive drop-offs in the ability to meet the new WUI codes.
Okay, thank you. Deepa, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Deepa Sivarajan. I'm the Washington Local Policy Manager for Climate Solutions, which is a nonprofit working in the Pacific Northwest to accelerate clean energy solutions to the climate crisis. As such, we strongly oppose any delay in implementation of the 2021 energy codes. Last year, Climate Solutions joined organizations and thousands of residents across Washington in supporting the heat pump amendments, and to delay them now would be going in the face of all of that. Even just this week, folks who are opposing the delay sent in 635 emails to the Building Code Council, strongly urging to implement the codes as planned. The 2021 energy codes, which set a national standard by being the cleanest codes in the country, are necessary to move our buildings off of polluting fossil fuels and towards clean electricity. Washington State's 2021 Clean Energy Strategy found that electrification is the lowest cost pathway to achieving our statutory climate targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 95% below 1990 levels by 2050. A request to delay the implementation of these codes has been proposed, but citing the Ninth Circuit Court's recent decision on the City of Berkeley's electrification ordinance. However, the City of Berkeley is widely expected to request a rehearing on the Ninth Circuit ruling before the end of the month. So there is no reason to delay code implementation based on a legal battle that is very much still in progress. This delay will have real impacts. Requiring heat pumps for heating, cooling, and water heating in all new homes and buildings both helps to mitigate future climate impacts and helps build resilient homes and buildings with heat pumps that provide cooling along with heating during Washington's increasingly hotter and smokier summers. Just this past weekend and continuing through this week, Washington is experiencing unprecedentedly early May heat waves. Further delay on code implementation will leave more Washingtonians vulnerable to these impacts. Finally, in my role as a Washington local policy manager, I liaise and work with a lot of local governments around the state, and many local governments are relying on the SPCC's work to support their own climate action. For example, the city of Tacoma halted their own analysis of building decarbonization strategies for new construction because the state had already taken action, expecting that the codes would be implemented as planned beginning July 1st, 2023. A delay would waste precious local government resources to address this in order to meet their own climate goals. So we urge you to reject any delay to the implementation of the 2021 commercial and residential energy codes and stand behind the thoughtful policy that this council passed last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. Just a reminder for those during public comment, please refrain from being repetitive. You can state your agreement with prior public comment. And if you have any new information, you can bring that forward. Kevin, go ahead.
You're muted, Kevin. He lowered his hand.
Oh, sorry. Rick, go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity to comment today. My name is Rick Marshall, and I'm a builder and developer down here in Southwest Washington. You know, we focus mostly on infill projects and energy efficiency. I strongly urge the council to not delay the implementation of the new energy and heat pump codes. The updates are cost effective to the consumer, and delays will be bad for business. In highly competitive markets like our residential housing sector, regulatory uncertainty is not helpful. Uncertainty makes it harder to plan investments, and it makes it harder to set up and manage supply chains. We're less productive. Regulatory uncertainty will cost our economy money. Now, we're pretty small, and we've been building energy efficient and using ductless heat pumps for over 15 years. But I do know some of the bigger developers in our area, and especially with their multifamily products, they all moved to high performance shells and heat pumps a number of years ago. I think the real kicker in our area was the 2020 wildfire smoke, and everyone pretty quickly realized that it would be really tough to sell or rent anything without AC. Personally, we put in new ductless systems in 5 of our rentals in early 21, and we were really lucky to have them in place before the heat dome. So as it's been mentioned before, if you're going to have AC and you're using a high performance shell and getting good energy efficiency, you couple that with our mild climate, so it just and your heating loads aren't high, then it just makes sense to use a heat pump. I think the only real question is how big of a house or building do you need before starting to take a look at ground source heat pumps? We've never been able to get them to pencil, partly because air source units keep getting better and cheaper. So let me just reiterate, please don't delay implementing the new codes. Delays will just make us less productive. We need to move on from this issue and get back to building houses. I know our communities need more of them. Thank you.
Johnny, go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Johnny Kocher. I work at RMI, climate policy nonprofit, and to accelerate the clean energy transition. I thank SPCC staff and members for the opportunity to speak today. I won't be repetitive. I'll just echo a lot of what Deepa just said, adding that the court in the CRA versus Berkeley case reiterated that the Energy Policy Conservation Act does provide an exemption for preemption from new construction codes under the framework of 426297. Also, we are not here to relitigate the 1.5 years of code development process. I understand that some parties are unhappy with the final code. That doesn't mean that the code should be delayed. Economic and energy analysis by RMI was submitted with the initial code, and Pacific Northwest National Laboratory has done further analysis, meeting all of the requirements for the economic and energy analysis for the code. I hope that the State Building Codes Council takes this under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Kevin, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to wholeheartedly agree with Tyler Burbidge and his testimony. A couple of things that I want to bring up to the council. Those of us that have been in the industry for a long time remember the good sense homes where we were required to build very tight homes and they ended up rotting. Concerns with ventilation and the WUI, this is going to prove to be problematic again. And just quickly, everybody that doesn't want the code delayed, I'd like to ask them, given the fact that interest rates now are coming up and up and up, people cannot afford to build houses now. It's very, very apparent. And as we add layer upon layer of new energy requirements and new building requirements, we are pricing everybody out. I'd ask, somebody needs to take a hard economic look and see, are we violating the Fair Housing Act? That's a federal statute. So thank you again for the opportunity. Please, please give us a chance to work together, all of us. And we need this delayed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Richard, go ahead. Richard?
Yep, I'm unmuting.
Okay,
The State Building Code Council is part of the state government, and your decisions should be consistent with state law. In 2021, the Climate Commitment Act was passed that established a lowering cap on emissions to help Washington achieve its commitment to reducing emissions by 95% by 2050. In 2021, the climate commitment, the longer the energy codes are delayed, the more people will have to retrofit their natural gas appliances for electric ones, not because appliances have worn out, but due to the lowering cap on emissions. Retrofitting costs more than originally putting in heat pumps. It will be the homeowner that will get stuck with the bill. The building industry should be thanking the legislature for passing House Bill 1110 this year that now allows them to build profitable, dense housing instead of whining to you about impacted profits. They will never be satisfied with how much profit they can capture. Please do not forget the larger picture. We are in a climate crisis. Last March, the IPCC reported that climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health, and there is a rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. For far too often, decision makers at every level of government have listened to how regulations could threaten the profits of businesses and stopped aggressively addressing climate change instead of protecting the health and welfare of the public. This has to stop now. Part of your mission is to protect the health and welfare of the public. Do you want to tell your grandchildren that the window of opportunity to address climate change was missed because a 5-year profit projection was deemed too important to challenge? Please reject any delay and vote to keep the codes on their original timeline to be implemented beginning July 1st, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Patricia, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Patricia High. I'm a project architect for EHDD in Seattle. We are an architecture and design firm that specializes in sustainable design strategies, including electrification and decarbonization. We have proven that these strategies can be implemented on a wide variety of projects, including publicly funded buildings with tight budgets. All electric buildings are a realistic and implementable solution to reducing emissions. Furthermore, it's much more cost effective to use best practices now during initial construction than to have to retrofit later. We need to implement these codes on the original timeline to prevent the need to renovate and upgrade buildings later if the code is delayed. I strongly urge the council not to delay the implementation of the 2021 code. Please do not disrespect the public process and rigorous technical review that occurred last year that led to the passage of these codes by delaying their implementation. Doing so will only serve to enable further climate catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Bill, go ahead.
Hi, Aldasi. Okay, hi, my name is Bill. I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club. Thanks for having some public opportunity for the public to comment today. I guess other people have talked about a lot of technical things. I just want to talk about the, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And there are, emission targets at the local, state, national, and international levels. And the carbon reduction targets keep being missed because instead of electrifying, there are still, there are still fossil fuels being used. And so I urge you to implement this policy. It was a well thought out, it's a well thought out policy. There were several public comment periods last year about this issue. And I know that everyone involved, had a lot of work and did a lot of studying about it to come up with a very good policy. So I urge you to pass a policy so that we can reduce the use of fossil fuels and do better at meeting the carbon emission targets that we need to do in order to have healthy, sustainable communities. Thanks.
Kathleen, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Petrie, and I'm representing King County and speaking on against the code delay, please. Many of us worked hard over the past 2 years to develop the codes, and some of these concerns being shared today were addressed during the public development process. Also, on October 14th of 2022, King County and 7 other jurisdictions sent a letter providing support for codes that reduce climate pollution, protect the health of our residents, and promote an equitable transition to a clean energy economy. As local jurisdictions, we lack the authority to develop codes for new residential buildings, making state action even more important. Strong energy codes are needed now to reach our local carbon emission reduction target and continue us forward on the statewide goal to reduce energy use in the built environment. Thank you very much.
Jasmine, go ahead.
Thank you.
My name is Jasmine Chu, and I work at RMI and specifically work with the America's All In Coalition. And today I'm here to share a statement on behalf of one of our members, the International Living Future Institute. On behalf of the International Living Future Institute, I'm here to express my deep concern regarding the potential delay in the implementation of the 2021 Washington State Energy Code. As an organization headquartered in Washington and working for an ecologically restorative world in Washington and beyond, I strongly urge you and the council to move forward with the timely adoption and enforcement of this thoughtful and important policy. ILFI's work aligns closely with the 2021 Energy Code, which we see as a crucial step towards an environmentally just future. To avoid getting repetitive, because this statement aligns very much with many comments that have been shared today, I want to implore you to carefully consider the potential consequences of any delay in implementing the 2021 Washington State Energy Code. The code represents a significant opportunity for us to demonstrate leadership in sustainability and to be at the forefront of innovative solutions that can make a tangible difference. Please reject the delay and vote to keep the codes on their original timeline to be implemented beginning July 1st, 2023. Thanks to you, Chair, and members of the council for listening to my public comment today.
Thank you, Jasmine. Just a reminder to those in public comment, for this agenda item, you have one opportunity for public comment. So if you've already had public comment, then you will have to wait for another agenda item that, as long as it relates, you'll be able to do public comment then, but you will not get multiple opportunities for public comment on this agenda item. Thank you. Alice, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Alice Lockhart with 350 Seattle. We are an organization that works for climate justice. And we both appreciate and support the State Building Code Council's work to ensure that Washington State has a strong clean energy code for new buildings. I'm here to ask you not to delay putting your good work into action. As I'm sure you all know, fossil fuel appliances that are installed now will create climate pollution over a span of 15 to 20 years, contributing to the probability of the Earth's temperature passing an irretrievable tipping point sooner rather than later. And installing appliances that will need to be removed in later decarbonization work may allow higher profits for developers, although it's not at all clear that that's the case. But it will certainly overall make housing less, not more affordable. As a homeowner who is currently exploring installing a heat pump in my 100-year house, I would hate to have to do so in my 2-year house. That would be, anathema. Every such appliance is one too many. So please, please, please don't delay. Thank you.
Pamela, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Dr. Pamela Braff, and I am the Director of Climate Programs for the City of Olympia. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today against delayed implementation of the State Energy Code. I am an earth scientist with a specialty in climate science and public policy. And as a scientist, I studied how the climate crisis interferes with nearly every aspect of our lives, our health, our safety, community well-being, and our economy. And as a public servant, I work every day to try and mitigate those same harms. An immediate and sustained reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is critical to maintain a livable climate. The good news is that we know what needs to be done, and we already have the technology needed to make it happen. The recent updates to the Washington State Energy Codes are a key step in that direction. There's no viable path to achieve state and local climate goals without economy-wide electrification, and the State Building Code Council should not delay its previous work to develop a thoughtful policy that will help transition to a clean energy economy. I urge you to allow implementation of the Washington State Energy Codes without delay. Thank you.
Lisa, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Lisa Parsley and I'm an Olympia City Council member. First, I want to thank you for listening to my comment as well as everybody else's. I'm speaking obviously and against the delay of implementation of the State Energy Code. I don't have a lot to add because I support everything I have heard for those speaking against the delay, but I would like to add this. In 2018, the City of Olympia passed a climate inheritance resolution promising the youth of our community to protect their future from the risks of climate destruction and to achieve the goal of net zero emissions by 2040. We also promised in that resolution that we would help with climate justice for those marginalized portions of our community. We cannot achieve this on our own. We need strong statewide standards to support local climate actions. The City of Olympia is relying on the State Building Code Council to work with us to help us achieve these goals. Many jurisdictions like our own, as we have heard, are excited to adopt cleaner statewide energy codes to protect our health and climate. On-time implementation is also important for the clarity for the builders and our residents. So on behalf of the City of Olympia, I urge you to allow the jurisdictions to implement the Washington State Energy Codes without delay. Thank you for hearing us all, and thank you for considering not delaying.
Ally, go ahead. Ally Lee, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ally Lee. I am a health and equity specialist and just wanted to say that during the heat wave, overburdened communities are impacted the most. They also have a life expectancy that's 7 to 13 years less than other communities due to their air quality. And when a heat dome comes our way, it's hard for them to find resiliency centers or cooling centers to then support their needs as far as for health disparities. Our elderly are constantly under this sort of concern as far as what to do. Our hope was for then this to move forward as quickly as possible so that we could set up as many resiliency centers and cooling centers and heating centers so that we could service our community that are the most impacted. We need and we ask for your action and implementation to start now. Please don't delay the codes because of legal battles that are in progress now, because every day counts when we're talking about overburdened and impacted communities. I want to thank you very much for your time and your work.
Okay, that concludes public comment on items not on the agenda. Okay, let's go ahead and move to agenda item number 6, which is ongoing off-cycle rules. Staff reports for the Adopt R4 occupancy group in the 2021 IBC and 2021 IFC. And then second bullet point in agenda item number 6 is modify the definition and provisions of childcare family home in IBC and IRC. To start this, I'll turn it over to Stoyan, and then we can open it up to public comment.
With the R4, it's been filed. The CR 102 is filed with the proposed language. There will be a public hearing on June 28th. We are also expecting public comments, written comments, and the date, the setup date is again June 28th. The only caveat with this CR 102 is that we need to schedule a special council meeting, or we need to wait until September when it's the regular council meeting. And I don't need to do it right now, but I will reach out to the council members and individual emails, and I will ask you for your preference. If you want to state your preference here, that's okay too. But we're following the requirements and the APA, and June 28th was the first date for the public hearing. After the public hearing, the council needs a work session to discuss the comments, if we receive comments, and to direct staff to file the CR 103. This is not a complicated proposal, complicated rule, so we can get this done at one council meeting. We don't need two. We just need to find the date for it. I was thinking for special meetings on June 30th or the week of July 10th, but we all know that the summer months are difficult to establish a good schedule and to have the quorum. This is for the R4 adoption. Of course, if you have questions, I will be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Stoyan. For now, let's go ahead and see if there's any public comment that's related to adopting the R4 and modifying the definitions. Okay, seeing no hands, with that, we'll open it up to council discussion. Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, so June 28 is the hearing date. From what I remember from some of the hearings, the council is invited to the meeting, but not, I mean, can you clarify, Stoyan, what the council's role is in the hearing? Because I remember before, like, we're not allowed to ask questions or something like that. So our role, if we go to the hearing, is simply to sit there. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
This is why we usually have the work session after the hearings where the council can discuss the comments. And also the council can invite folks that have provided comments. This is the typical way.
Okay, Micah, go ahead.
Just for verification, that June 28th meeting is going to be posted somewhere so folks have access to that in an agenda and documents. I'm not seeing that on the website.
The CR 102 is posted on the website. The CR 102 is also on the Ledge website, and the June 28th meeting will be also scheduled and posted on the website, probably end of next week.
Excellent. Thank you for that information.
Okay, any further council discussion on this? At this time, it does not require council action. Okay, with that, we will move to agenda item number 7, which is emergency. Sorry, go ahead.
We have the second bullet point, the childcare.
I apologize. I thought both were addressed. Go ahead.
No, Dustin will cover.
Dustin, go ahead. My apologies.
No worries. So we have been working on modifying the definition of family home childcare in the IBC and IRC. There are also a couple definitions in the IFC that are affected by the potential changes. And so we filed CR 101 on all 3 of those codes for these changes. We've had some meetings with the work group proposing potential language for the IRC where the bulk of the changes will occur. We've had some meetings with that work group and the tag, and there's still some stuff to be worked out. And as of today, we have another work group session scheduled on the 30th of this month to come back with some responses to the tag requests with some options for justifying an increase from 12, which is the current maximum allowed within an IRC structure, to 16. And we're workshopping that at the moment, and we're hoping to get that to the CR 102 process and open public comment on that.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Any council comments? Micah, go ahead.
Just for clarification purposes, Dustin, can you explain the CR 101 process and what that means for this proposal? Or Stoyan, whoever would like to do that.
So the CR 101 is a filing that we do with the revisor's office. And what that says to them and the public is that the council has intention to potentially work on these codes. So within that filing, there's really no meat in there. It just says we have an intention to work on certain sections. And the CR 102 is where most of the proposal language will be filed and identified. And then CR 103 there identifies changes to the CR 102 when we do the final filing. So currently, if you were to look up the CR 102, there is Nothing there for public to look at. If the public was interested to see what is going on, they could take a look at our past meetings that we've had for the TAG and the BFP. There are documents posted on our website that show the language proposals, and there, if they look at the most recent BFP meeting, which was earlier this week on Wednesday, is the most current draft on that. But I expect some significant changes in that coming on the 30th.
Thank you very much for putting that information out there for folks.
Okay, anything further from council members? Okay, and just in case there was, it was unclear in the beginning of this agenda item, is there any public comment on the definitions? The second bullet point. Okay, seeing none. Okay, before jumping into agenda item number 7, we're going to take a 15-minute recess, and then we will come back and tackle agenda items 7 and 8.
All
Okay,
right.
we'll call this meeting back to order. To start, we'll have Dustin do a roll call.
Chell Anderson. Well, we might not be live in here yet.
Can hear you guys.
Okay.
Okay, call this meeting back to order. We will go ahead and do a roll call. Dustin?
Chell Anderson.
I can see him.
I see him in here. He's muted. We'll come back. Jay Arnold.
Here.
Todd Bayreuther.
Here.
Justin Bourgeault.
He's in the attendees list with his hand raised.
Okay. I see him there. We'll mark him as down. He's been promoted. Micah Chappelle.
Here.
Tony Doan.
Here.
Damon Doyle.
Here.
Tom Handy.
Here.
Roger Hiringa. Matthew Hepner.
Here.
Craig Holt.
He raised his hand.
Is he in the
No, he's in here.
okay. Ty Menser.
Here.
Pete Reekie.
Here.
Katie Sheehan.
Here.
Caroline Traub. And for our ex officio members, we got Representative Keith Gaynor.
Here.
We got Lauren Lathrop.
Here.
Senator John Lovick. Representative Alex Ramel.
Here.
Senator Linda Wilson. And Dirk Meerbigtal.
Mayor Dustin, thank you.
And we have a quorum once more.
Okay,
This
excellent,
is-
Chell. Okay,
This Joe, I'm here.
okay, thank you,
Gotcha.
Chell.
Sorry to come back.
Okay, let's move to agenda item number 7. What we'll do is This is the emergency and off-cycle rules related to energy storage systems. We have the 2018 IFC readopt the emergency rule and the 2021 IFC off-cycle rule. Okay, so those are the two things to be considered. Both will have public comment as well as council action. Stoyan, go ahead.
The first bullet point is easy. I will just mention that we filed the emergency rule, and the expiration date is January 25th, and we need to refile it. So we will ask the council to direct staff to refile it. It's a little bit misleading when we read the agenda, because we may need to refile it one more time in 2021 International Fire Code, but the council doesn't need to specify in the motion which code. We'll figure it out with the code revisor's office. So the first thing is the council needs to vote on refiling the emergency rule because it's effective until May 25th.
Okay.
And we need this because we're still working on the off-cycle rule that will be in 2021 International Fire Code, and I'll spend more time on that rule later.
Okay, very good. So that's kind of the rundown of that. Public comment related to the readoption of the emergency rule as it relates to the energy storage systems in the IFC. Andrea Smith, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Andrea Smith on behalf of BIW. We are in full support of this and recognize that it's been since November since the proponent of this has asked for this to be, solidified. So we are in full support and hope to get your acceptance today. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Any further public comment as it relates to the emergency rule? Okay, with that, we will open it to council discussion. Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. I have some questions on the emergency rule filing, and is this being also filed for 2018 for off-cycle rulemaking?
No, the council voted on the emergency rule. It's effective for 120 days. This is in 2018 International Fire Code, and again, the expiration date is next week, May 25th.
But we're not going into off-cycle rulemaking. The reason I ask is, so if this goes away, and in the future, a future state where you come back to a code or you come back to a structure that it's able to be maintained under the code or rules that were adopted at the time, this would no longer be in effect. So this wouldn't apply to 2018 projects in the future. I know that sounds crazy, but without it being an off-cycle rule, am I missing something here? And is there a reason we're not adopting it as an off-cycle rule to maintain or stay with the 2018 rules?
You're missing one very important thing that I keep saying. We are adopting this code language in the Washington Administrative Code, and we have to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act and with the Code Revisor's Office policies and procedures. So based on our conversations, you can't file two off-cycle rules because the currently adopted rule is in 2021 International Fire Code. We were having a difficult time to file even the emergency rule in 2018 International Fire Code. We used an old emergency rule to add this one to it. So unfortunately, I don't know a way that we can file two off-cycle rules in 2018 and in 2021.
Just for clarification on this, does the emergency rule for 18 is just to carry us to July 1? Or would we have two codes at that point?
We need to find a way to refile only one emergency rule that will be applicable in both codes, while we are working on the off-cycle rule for 2021 International Fire Code.
Okay. Okay. Micah, go ahead.
I'll hold off. Go ahead, Chair.
Okay, Chell, go ahead.
I'm kind of in agreement. I mean, we have projects that are still being built under the 2015 codes, and we'll have projects for the next many years under the 2018 codes. And seems like, I guess I don't understand the impediment to also having a permanent rule under the 2018 codes. What is the actual impediment? Is it a technical, like code revisor's office impediment? Is it like a law, or what is the actual impediment?
I will show you my screen in a little bit. Can you allow me to share my screen? Okay, so this is WAC Title 51, and if we go to the fire code, and I need to, so you see right here, effective July 1st, 2023. So this section is effective July 1st, 2023, and this section effective until July 1st, 2023. This is currently in the WAC, and it is 2018 International Fire Code, amendment in 2018 International Fire Code, and here is the new language. So before we go to the code revisor's office, we ask OTS, I can't remember if it was Office of Typing Services, and I know Krista will correct me if I'm wrong. We ask them for the currently adopted language, and they sent us whatever is adopted. So when we ask them, can you guys provide us with section 5154A 0308? I'm using this section, for example, they will give us this. They won't give us this. And we are planning to have another conversation with them and figure out how we can deal with this 2018-2021, because Krista is telling me that the council has done it before, but I was told otherwise when I was trying to figure out a way to do that as Micah requested. So it's not the council.
We were able to.
Krista
We did that
will
with
be able.
Okay, we did that with a 2018 IBC for the mass timber adoptions, where we adopted both amendment to the prior code and the code about to be enforced. And so I know there's at least that precedent.
Okay, Krista has
Let's
her hand
Krista,
up. Okay,
let's-
Krista, go ahead.
Right, just to clarify, we've adopted emergency rules under a previous code, but we can't, because it's adopted under the same WAC number, we can't adopt a permanent rule under the same WAC number to apply to a previous code. So because we've already adopted new language under that WAC number, we can't go in and revise the old language again. So we have not adopted an amendment to a previous code language after adopting the new code.
Again, looking at the effective date. So after we pass July 1st, this doesn't exist in the WAC anymore. And I understand your concern, but again, we have to comply with that. And after July 1st, if we request, okay, give us the language in this section, they will give us 2021. We can't do two off-cycle rules, as Krista said, with the same WAC number.
Okay, Micah, go ahead.
So what we're hearing is there's a process problem from some other entity that we're having to follow, which is would actually, in my opinion, cause some conflicts with the rest of the codes, including the existing building codes that we adopt, that has language saying that the codes that were adopted at that time still apply to that structure in perpetuity until you do something different. And so now this won't apply to those that were constructed during the time when these were enacted as a rule, because they'll go away under some process from another organization. I think there's obviously a deficit there that needs to be corrected. And I'm not the only one that's seeing it. Chell just mentioned he's seeing the same thing. And so it is a problem, and we need to find a way to fix that.
I've been coordinating with Dirk for a long time, and it was the first thing that I saw when I got the job here. We are adopting the code in the Washington Administrative Code, and it creates issues when we're applying the building codes in the way the jurisdictions are applying the building codes. So it's an issue that I agree it needs to be resolved. I just don't know how.
Dustin, go ahead.
This would be a question, I guess, for both Stoyan, Krista, and maybe Dirk. Is it possible to adopt in the current WAC that's becomes effective? So like in our filing, we have effective dates, but is it possible to adopt into the actual WAC language effective in sunset dates for these rules that we're having the conflict with, as far as, you know, the 2018 code is kind of already been shoved out the door by the new adoption of our code. And so my question is, could we adopt in the WAC language effective dates that would maybe cover the 2018 code at the time that the July 1st filing becomes effective?
Well, it's a general statement. It's not only the fire code related, it applies to all codes. And again, Mike, I understand your concern, and we are required to do that.
I'm going to jump in here. This is reminding me of logic game puzzles on the LSAT. So you have to forgive me if I'm a little behind here, but my lawyer friends will understand what that means. Is the issue, maybe Mike or Chell could tell me, that when an emergency rule is in place, irrespective of whether it's this issue or some other issue, that emergency builders are required to comply with that requirement during the pendency of that emergency rule for the period of time that emergency rule is in place, and then it goes away and they'll have, and they're no longer required to comply with it. Is that part of what's going on here? Or did I just completely miss the point?
No, that's kind of it. But if it goes away and in the future, you come back under the existing code rule, you know, an existing building code, and it says more or less that what that structure was to at the time can stay in place. In other words, those codes and you can enforce those still based on that, you know, but they come in and modify it. Then the sections they modify need to meet new codes. But if this no longer exists, it can't be enforced, and then it's not usable for those structures that it was enforced on originally, if that makes any sense, if it's gone and there's no rule to go back to. And I may be reading more than that, but Chell, go ahead.
Well, real quick, sorry, to that, just for clarification. The issue is that we would be adopting a 2018 emergency rule. As of the 21 adoption, that would no longer be effective. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it would no longer be effective for projects that are vested under the 2021 code.
Exactly.
But it would still need to be in effect for projects that are vested to the 2018 code in perpetuity.
Right. Understood. Okay. Chell.
Yeah, and that's where I was going is we have projects that are trailing codes for many years, and we need to go back to them to see what, you know, the code officials need to go back to them and see what rules they were permitted under. And if in fact somebody comes back a few years later and says, well, you were non-conforming because you didn't build to the code, we would have to be able to go back and point to the code section that we built to. And in fact, it wouldn't exist because it was an emergency rule that expired. And we could do some, you know, we could.
But it was still lawful, Chell, at the time that you built because you were complying with the emergency.
Exactly. Yeah. But it'd be very hard to find for,
yeah,
let's say,
and just as a reminder for folks, emergency rules aren't published like at the code revisers. They are published as part of the codified code, so they don't become the WAC. The WACs are codified, emergency rules aren't. So they live somewhere in the website and have to be disseminated through other means, and someone just pulling up a WAC. The code revisor website doesn't tell us the whole story. So that's part of the confusion, no doubt, when it comes time for Chell and his colleagues to look back as to what was built under the 2018. code.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible that maybe I was a project architect it was built under, and I'm, no longer working on the project and unavailable to remember why it was built the way it was built, even though it was conforming at the time. Code official, the architect, would not have a great record of that it was built to meet the code.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So that's one problem. And then Tony, there's the other problem of how to just deal with the specific code challenge, given the fact that we're moving over into new codes and the code revisor's office's procedural issues.
And procedurally, are we not allowed to do an emergency rule on the 21?
The current
during off cycle. So as soon as the 21 comes in, the emergency rule is in place until off cycle is completed. Does that make any sense? Probably not.
Well, so I haven't done any specific analysis of this issue, so I'm winging a little bit, so bear with me. But the 2018 codes don't exist anymore as far as what's on the books. What's on the books are the 2021 codes, right? Which become effective on July 1st. So if we go to the code revisor's office and say, we want to make some changes to this WAC, they're going to give us the ones that go into effect on July 1st. So to Dustin's point, a solution to that could be to draft an emergency rule that is just more specific about the timing of when certain requirements kick in. Right? You could just say this for this period of time, the compliance requirements are X, and then following a certain day, they're Y. So that would be a potential workaround for it. But you would be amending the codes that go into effect on July 1st, not the 2018 cycle codes.
Understood.
I kept saying that this is complicated and nobody believed me until now. So thank you, Micah and Cheryl.
Oh, I believed you.
We all believed you. We just have great answers.
Yeah. With that, I do understand that we do need to readopt the emergency rule. And I don't want to cut off discussion, but I think if we readopt the emergency rule, that would allow us time to figure out a solution before that emergency rule expires. Would my assumption on that be correct, Stoyan?
It will buy us some time, yes.
Okay.
Jay, go ahead. Sorry. Did I cut you off, Micah? If you had something further.
I was going to make a motion, but I don't want to cut off discussion. So go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Jay, go ahead.
Just given what I'm hearing, given the time frame, I'm wondering if this might be something that gets kicked to the legislative committee, because it sure sounds like there might need to be some agency request legislation to fix this kind of issue that I'm hearing, to allow multiple versions of the code to be dealt with at the code revisor's office.
Many sections in the RCW needs to be. Sorry, Dirk, I cut you off.
I don't think that that's wrong. If you don't mind me jumping in real quick, I don't know if there's a specific statutory fix to this specific problem. I think the issue there's two problems. One is off-cycle rulemaking done through emergency rule, which is not as transparent or permanent by definition, right, as regular rulemaking. And I don't know if there's a legislative fix to that. The second, though, is I think, if I'm following this right, that sort of more purposefully drafted emergency rules could potentially solve the problem, so that we're just being very prescriptive and specific in those as to which code provisions apply when. I think that's a workaround here that could work, but again, I haven't explored the specific issue.
Thank you. Dustin, did you have something?
I've lowered my hand.
Okay. Micah, go ahead.
So with that, thanks, Derek. Yeah, that's a tough call whether we can make language work in the 2021 that's retroactive to the 2018 based on vesting requirements in the administrative sections of the code, but something to explore. Like I said, I know we need to readopt this, so I'd like to make a motion that we readopt the emergency rule for the 2018 IFC for energy storage systems as posted.
If you can, and I will ask Dirk for clarification on that one. If we don't specify 2018 or 2021, it will give us some extra options to explore this, how to file it. Can the council vote on readopting the rule without specifying 2018 or 2021? Because for the purposes of the code revisor's office, it's not really important.
I guess my advice would be that the council should direct staff to file a rule that accomplishes whatever substantive goals you want. And then the emergency rule could be written accordingly.
I'll second Micah's motion just for the record. And then we can modify it.
Was that too lawyerly? Because it made sense in my head. So I want to make sure you guys are following what I'm saying.
It didn't make any sense to me. I don't know. I don't know what we can do there. And I'm not sure what story you're trying to get is that we don't specify year for this rule, for this emergency rule, or this readoption of an emergency rule that already specified the year.
I will try to clarify. So if you specify 2018 International Fire Code, we will file it. It's easy task with the expiring date July 1st. But we need another emergency rule effective July 1st, which will be in 2021 International Fire Code. And we don't have a council meeting in the summer. We have a council meeting in September.
Oh, why July 1st? I didn't specify an end date. Wouldn't be the standard emergency timeline.
You said 2018 International Fire Code with or without the expiring date. We will need an emergency rule in 2021 because we won't be able to complete the cycle rule.
Or the emergency rule will overwrite the 2021 language.
Yes, and the language is different.
Okay.
Why not? I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in again. Why not write an emergency rule that says until July 1st, here's what the compliance are, starting July 1st, and then do what's, the language that's effective July 1st. And then that's for 4 months and it'll expire. I understand you can't then, there's some timing as far as to piggyback a next code, but I mean, can't you just resolve that in a single document rather than have to file another one come July 1st?
That's what Stoyan is implying, yes.
Okay. Is that what you're saying, Stoyan?
I was going to say we can try.
I know you can do that. That shouldn't be a problem.
Justin, go ahead.
I'm just looking at the current emergency rule filing, and it doesn't specify 2018 code within it.
Well, it doesn't because
I guess my question would be, are the section numbers the same in this one? Does it change to the IFC chapter number change?
based on Ken's, if Ken is here, I believe the language changed in 2021.
Well, I mean, I think the chapter number, it might be 1207 in the.
And I believe the section number changed as well, but I can't be.
Sections changed, yes.
It did?
So that might be one of the reasons why we couldn't just file a emergency rule that covers both of them unless we include all of them.
That's what I was trying to get at, but probably didn't word it very well. But it's along the lines of what Derek is saying, is file them both, one that takes effect when when the 21 code gets adopted with that language, and one for 18 up until then, up until the adoption. And if we leave it, that's, I think, a workaround to this. Chell, go ahead.
That sounds great. I know we're going to be talking today and next Wednesday about delaying the code implementation date. So I don't want to have staff file an emergency rule today and then on Wednesday have to update that to a new date. That seems like a waste of effort. So I think putting the hard number of July 1st in there would be challenging or potentially require redoing it.
Okay, I think this is to Stoyan's point, and I don't know if we're allowed to do this or not, but
I want to show something.
go ahead, Stoyan.
This is how we filed the emergency rule. When I said we were looking for a way around, this is how we filed it, because we couldn't get, keep in mind that the request for the emergency rule came after 2021 language was already adopted. So when we asked OTS, can you please send us the language in this section, they sent us 2021. And when we said, no, we don't need this, we need 2018, they said no. And this is how we filed it. We used another emergency that was filed, so we added NFPA 855 to it. This is how it's filed. In a normal circumstances, you won't see this NFPA here, you will see only that. That was following the advice from the OTS and the code revisor's office. Did I make it more complicated?
Well, we amended an existing emergency rule.
Yes,
Is what,
this is what we did.
so you see the WSR number 1902086, they amended that with the current emergency rule adoption.
Chair, go ahead.
We have a motion on the table. I did second it, but I'm confused as to what. We kind of know what we want to do. We just don't have the words to do it, perhaps. Micah, do you have a way forward for us?
I was just going to ask what the recommended modification of the motion would be in order to capture what is necessary, because I did make the motion as posted on is what you're showing, but you're indicating that if we modify it somehow, that it would be better, but I would need a little more direction on what that modification needs to be for the motion.
Can I make a recommendation and then you guys can tear it apart? Okay. What if the motion said something along the lines of directing staff to file an emergency rule to address energy storage systems in the 2018 IFC and the 2021 IFC based on implementation dates? Too broad?
I think that's a little too broad. Just speaking
Okay.
for myself.
Well-
But I think if you were to narrow it a little bit to say to extend, because you're not making any substantive changes here. So you'd say to extend the current emergency rule standards through a certain date and then address the July 1st effective date, something along those lines, then I think that would be clear enough. Or did I just screw this up?
What if it's just to expand the emergency rule and we will find a way around it? Without specifying anything, we will work on the language and.
That might be the easiest, because I think we could fix this. All you guys want to do is just extend the current rule that was for 2018 until July 1st. That's the problem, right?
Or until the 2021.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Micah, go ahead.
I didn't hear what Chell said, and I'd like to hear that. What'd you say, Chell?
Or until the 2021 codes take effect.
Yeah, the effective date of the new codes.
Okay. Go ahead, Tony.
I don't think that fixes it. That still leaves a gap because we're not addressing the emergency rule at the 21 level. That's our gap. That's the problem. Right? Am I missing something? Because we have to address the 21 adoption and the emergency rule as a stopgap to complete off cycle for the 21. Otherwise, we get the gap. So if we only address 18 until July 1, then boom, our gap starts July 1 because we have not addressed emergency rule for the 21 because off cycle won't be done. That's our problem.
So why wouldn't we just adopt it for 120 days?
Right.
Extend it for 120 and call it good.
Especially if the language is similar or the same, right? At least at this point.
What we can do, we will adopt with emergency rule only the standard until we develop the complete proposal that can submit it. So we will file the rule. If you direct staff to expand the emergency rule, we will do that regardless 2018 or 2021. We will find a way of doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Tony, I didn't fully understand the implications of the new 2021 rule that Ken is working on. So that's a little bit of a gap for me. I think what Stoyan said is right, and that's what your motion should say.
Okay.
We're all like going, what the
Yeah,
I'm like this.
It's just
I'm pulling out what hair I don't have. It's a tough one because I understand where Tony's coming from. If we just extend the 2018, it doesn't capture projects that vest to the 2021 as of July 1st until the off-cycle rule takes effect, whenever that is in the future. So there is a gap there, and this emergency rule doesn't get us there. And we would have to essentially adopt another emergency rule for the 2021 gap.
Why would there be a gap? You could
Because this only applies to this would only apply to projects vested under the 2018 code, not projects that vest under the 2021, which could occur as of July 1, but your off-cycle rules say it's not ready till November. So your gap is July 1 to November. Those projects would not have anything to adhere to, or we wouldn't have anything to enforce. That's my understanding.
Okay.
This is why I said we will need to refile it again in 2021.
Yeah. Okay. Krista, go ahead,
Let's
and
hear
then
from
I'll get to Chell.
The emergency rule would override whatever other language and still be effect. It wouldn't necessarily apply to the 2021 or the 2018 because it's in statute and is state law. It would affect the 2021.
So what you're
So
saying,
it could
Krista,
either
is
conflict with the language that's there or overrule the language that's there in another section, or overrule it.
so if you build to the emergency rule, you're in compliance. So as long as for the period, as long as that emergency rule is in effect.
And then the emergency rules can always be repealed once the new rule is adopted.
They would be repealed when the new one's adopted because it would be an amendment to the rule.
Micah.
I'm struggling with that based on vesting requirements in chapter 1. That doesn't seem right. That means that even if you, that means you would only have to build to what's adopted in the WAC, no matter the timeline. That just doesn't make sense to me. That's all.
Not to be the bad guy here, but I've been talking about this for 2 years. There is an issue with it, and that was my major concern. I'm glad you realized that I wasn't lying.
Okay, Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the best that we can do today is to extend the emergency rule by 120 days without specifying which code it applies to.
Okay.
Then I will modify my motion to extend this emergency rule for the 120 days. Period.
Okay, Chell, do you accept
Sounds
that
good to me.
modification?
Accept.
Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. If anyone has anything further.
I just want to say I apologize for the process discussion for folks that are waiting around for other items. Thank you.
The process stuff is the most fun. Micah, what are you talking about?
Okay, anything further for discussion on that? Okay, with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Very well. Okay. With that, we will go to bullet point number 2, which is the 2021 IFC off-cycle rule.
Dustin, can you show the proposal? So with with this off-cycle rule, we had a technical advisory group meeting. The technical advisory group made a recommendation. You see the language here on the screen. We had scheduled BFP meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't have quorum. However, 3 or 4 BFP members had a discussion on the language. And it's before the council now to direct staff to file the CR 102, recommend further modifications to the language, or refer back to the BFP committee. I'm not recommending either one. I'm just explaining the options.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. And as a BFP member, since we couldn't obviously make a formal recommendation as a committee, but we wanted, to state our individual support to recommend. So that's mine. And then Roger allowed me as a proxy to give his recommendation.
Thank you, Todd. So that doesn't, the BFP lack of quorum this week doesn't keep council from taking action on that.
No.
Okay. Very well. Micah, go ahead.
Thanks. As chair of the BFP, yes, we discussed this thoroughly. Overall, it was a recommended proposal. We did have a question come up towards the end that was not addressed, unfortunately, and that is in the scheme of 1201.1 that was unclear. And so we just wanted to maybe look at a clarification there and get help from the full council on that. If you read the first sentence, it says, obviously I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you get down to decommissioning of energy systems used for generating or storing energy, these more or less this chapter shall apply. And then the sentence after that, it says shall not apply to equipment associated with the generation. I think there was some confusion there. And if you want to look at those sentences for a few moments, and I think we may need to make a slight modification there, but of course, stick with the intent of where this applies. And I'm trying to review my notes to see if I have an answer to what we said could work.
Well, I was the one that brought that up then, and maybe there's a definition somewhere that could clarify that. I don't know what that definition might be, but is there a difference between the two somehow? To me, it seems like it's the same thing. But
Did the proponent at BFP have anything to explain that?
no.
Okay. Was Ken there? Burlett?
Yes.
Okay. Chael, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I saw when reading this is it applies to energy storage systems, and there's energy storage systems that are neither the two systems under this section. And I guess I wanted to see if anybody else agreed with that. And I don't know, it seems like there's, other types of energy storage systems out there that are not these two underneath it. And I don't know if then you just kind of ignore most of this section because they're not under the rest of either of the two options below this or not. I'm thinking of, Hydro is an energy storage system. And there's a few others that are not the two types of electrical systems listed under here.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in my mind, it wasn't necessarily the storage aspect of it. It's the generation aspect of it that seems to be in both sides.
Did the proponent have anything to say about the contents of the changes as far as it relates to generation or generating? Like, is there a frequent mention of it throughout?
I don't believe there is, and I believe his indication was that industry understood the sentences and how they were interpreted and how this applied is the feedback that I remember Ken mentioning.
Okay.
Just wanted to identify it as part of something that was in there. Again, the recommendation from, I believe, the majority of the BFP folks was that this should still move forward, that it wasn't a major issue, but I did want to point it out and let the council be aware, but that was it.
Okay.
Will now be time for a motion or
I'm going
public comment. Sorry.
I'm going to quickly open it up to public comment, and then we can get back to council discussion or action. So if anyone has any public comment related to the 2021 IFC off-cycle rule as far as energy storage systems goes, now's the time. Okay, seeing none. All right, with that, we'll go back to council if anyone would like to make a motion or further discuss. Go ahead, Micah.
I'll make a motion to approve the off-cycle rule and request it be moved into, is it CR 103?
102.
102. That the rule be moved into CR 102 process as proposed.
This is Craig, and I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Micah and a second from Craig. Thank you. Micah, would you like to speak to it?
Sure. Just for a little background, this is of course capturing some upcoming code language from the national level that just unfortunately takes a little longer to capture stuff to effectively provide minimum standards for the installation and use of these systems. And there's a big safety concern with some of these and some of the fires and big fires that are occurring from these storage systems. And this language should capture a lot of those items that are outstanding and be beneficial to the first responders. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
I think the BFP did a really good job going through and identifying the risks, and this solves the problem. So I think it's a good move to go forward with this.
Thank you, Craig. Any further discussion from council members? Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move to agenda item number 8, which is other business. Do any council members have any other business? Damon, go ahead.
I was really hoping somebody else would have something else. I didn't have to go first, but here I am. Based on the testimony we heard this morning for items not on the agenda, and I hate to sound like a broken wheel, but I would like to bring back up considering a delay in the code implementation until November. Would you like me to make a motion first, Mr. Chair, or simply go into comments?
You can make a motion.
I move that we delay implementation of the codes until for 120 days beginning on June 30th of this year.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Didn't we have a vote the last time on that?
What's that?
For the implementation, didn't we have a vote the last time for this?
We did. I don't know if that precludes it from being considered, though.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jay.
if it was considered last time and we're reconsidering something, somebody that was in the prevailing side needs to make that motion, is my understanding under Robert's rules.
Can I jump in for a minute?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think that just responding to Jay's point, I think that Robert's rules regarding reconsideration would apply if if the motion is made in the same meeting. Sometimes in the context of legislative context, that rule will arise if it happens in the same section. But since this is a subsequent meeting, I don't believe that reconsideration requirement kicks in. This would be more akin to a new motion or a motion to renew, which is allowable under Robert's rules.
Thank you, Derek. Helpful.
Yeah, and thank you, Derek. It's really based on testimony and new things that have come up that I think are worth discussing. So to restate the motion, it would be to delay implementation of the new codes for 120 days beginning on June 30th. If there's a second.
Okay, I'm having some difficulty hearing you, Damon. So the motion that I heard was a motion to delay the implementation of the 21 code for 120 days starting June 30th. Is that correct? Okay, we have a motion on the table.
And I would second that.
Okay, and we have a second from Tom. With that, we will open it up for discussion. Damon, would you like to speak further to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had, I don't know if I call the word pleasure, but I've had the pleasure of conducting 5 energy code, or excuse me, not energy code, but full code change trainings, including changes in the IRC, the WSEC, and the WUI. Over the last 3 weeks, I've had over 100 students, builders, building officials, and building industry professionals. And each time we go through the course, and it's been a 4-hour training in each case, more questions pop up and more instances. Well, if we do this, how do we implement that? It's been rare, having taught the code training since 2009, that something trumps the energy code, but it's really fun to get through the energy code with everybody scratching their head and jump into WUI and make everybody go, wait a minute, that made the energy code look easy. So not saying the WUI is bad. I'm saying that there's a lot of questions. I'm getting continual updates from my building official here in Thurston County, who happens to be active on our BFP, who took a ton of notes and brought a ton of material from the course she attended at WABA, which was an 8-hour course on WUI. And she's not still 100% wrapped around how this is going to be enforced. My primary point here isn't that the codes are bad or the codes need to be thrown out. It's that we don't have time, that people don't understand how they're going to implement this. And we're simply asking for time to get more trainings out, to make sure that the errors and omissions are fixed, and to put out something that's good. And I think that's really what our primary duty is. And it's delaying to November. You know, there was a lot of talk on the opposing side at the public hearing section of this meeting. People, talking about homes that we got a summer heat wave coming and people are going to suffer, and that indoor quality is suffering from all these people living in the homes. We've got 3.4 million existing units here in Washington State. And last year at a peak, we produced about 45,000 new units. So we're down around 1%. Even with the new code from now until the next cycle, we're going to put out, less than 3% of all the new housing. So we're not affecting any of this existing stock where people are experiencing these problems. This is for all the new homes, which now with the added costs are not some of the homes that the more disadvantaged sector of our society are going to be buying in the first place or living in. So I compel you to please consider delaying this just for 120 days so we can get things fixed. Thank you.
Tom, would you like to speak to your second?
I don't really have anything further than, what I explained the last time I seconded this.
Okay. Representative Vermel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will certainly defer to Derek with regards to the parliamentary rules, but I think the underlying intent of the rule that you need somebody from the prevailing side to make a motion is so that the body doesn't continuously re-deliberate on settled questions. And I think it is both not a good use of time, and it is confusing and not good government for a body to continually re-deliberate the same questions. There is not new information on this with respect. The information that we heard during public comment today is substantially the same as the information that we collected and the positions taken when the energy code was adopted. I am open to the possibility that we will get new information. We have a special meeting scheduled for next week, and if we get a new information that that suggests a different course, at that time would be the appropriate time for a discussion and a vote on this. I strongly urge the council to not just vote down this motion, but to do so quickly. Re-voting on settled questions time and time again doesn't respect the time that all of the volunteers and the public puts into these meetings. It's not a good use of time, and urge a no vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I think we should not delay the codes today. And I will not go through all of those right now in the interest of time, as Representative just said. We're about to have a special meeting next week to consider more thoughtfully what we do with codes. So I don't really see why we would act today demanding staff file rules when we will have a meeting so soon on the heels of this one, where we might have them file different rules with the additional information. So I guess I see this as like, I guess I don't see the point of this if we're going to meet so soon and discuss very similar things and have more information at that meeting. That's all.
Okay, Craig, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. You know, as I watched how the code has come about, Chell and Micah and the experts have done a really good job, and I'm honestly excited to see most of the code be implemented. But I'm concerned about the chaos that is going to happen without the municipalities, the utilities, and the industry being prepared. And in my opinion, has nothing to do with the profit or the lawsuit. I think delay of the implementation does not prevent the use of the new technology and the heat pumps or ventilation that are necessary to protect the environment. And moving forward now will also not protect the environment because it can't be enforced with some of the flaws in the way it is set up. The industry lacks the ability to understand and how to comply. Again, as I said before, I've been to several classes with engineers, and a good quarter, 25% of the time they're having to say, we don't know. So I think pumping the brakes allows the industry to effectively comply and municipalities to effectively enforce. So I ask to support this now, and we will learn more on Wednesday. But again, my point has nothing to do with the lawsuit. I think we're just not ready as an industry to fly into this yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Jay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Representative Ramel. We've not heard any new information that we didn't consider at our last meeting when we voted against consideration to delay. What we've heard through the public comment today were a number of policy issues from people that disagreed with the implementation. We had a robust public process over several years and very detailed technical review. I'm not interested in revisiting that on short notice. We do have some questions about legal issues, which we will be discussing in the executive session next Wednesday or whenever that gets scheduled, if that doesn't work for the majority of the council. And then finally, there's a question of training questions in errata, and we have a process for handling that. From what I've heard of this, for a great number of the questions out there, the code's got to be in place so that you can get a official decision on interpretation. So I think we should move forward and vote, and I will be voting against this motion.
Okay, Micah, go ahead.
Thanks for everyone's input. I know I was one that voted in favor of the delay, and during my discussion points, I did bring up that there were 3 different areas that we should be considering the delay for, and we lumped those all together. Yeah, you're kind of hearing some of the same issues, but that just tells me those issues aren't going away. They're not being done or handled at the pace that folks on here want to think they're being handled, and that can be done by July 1st. I appreciate staff getting out the insert pages. I know that folks have been looking at those, but there's a lot of problems. And even Stoyan mentions that they're not accurate and they're not correct yet, and they don't have time to necessarily fix them. There's not full versions of the code out anywhere. I think that a problem that some council members may have, in my opinion, is that they only see the codes moving forward based on the energy code. And that's not where all this leads to lie. We need to look at all the codes as a package and the issues that are surrounding those that we're hearing from the community, and the concerns with them, whether it's training, whether it's implementation, whether it's products, whether, all across the board. I agree with what Greg said. I think he mentioned that about, this is all for new construction. It's not about existing. You're not, the issues that are being brought up are things that, when people are suffering under existing structures. This doesn't apply to existing. The new code regulations won't apply to those unless you modify that existing, which is not going to occur. So I'm really on the fence. I know that the letters that have been sent out and the associations that are named in those letters are fairly important. And they all should have a say. I do disagree with some of their comments in the public testimony that say, it sounds like they're indicating we're adopting these in a vacuum without approaching stakeholders or stakeholders having involvement in this public process. Because we've been going through these codes for the last 2 years to modify it. So I do know that maybe needs to have more of their involvement, but we can't force them to show up. And we're still having our meetings per the requirements. So I'm really on the fence about this one today. I know maybe the special meeting, that may change a lot of folks' mind. We'll see what happens coming up. But we need to address this. 120 days is not going to make a significant difference. You're not going to get that much difference. And I think Greg did make another point that there's nothing preventing any project from constructing to the 2021 standards. There's a process in Chapter 1, it has been there for a long time, that says you can do any alternate and propose it. So if you want to meet to the greater standard, there is nothing at all preventing you from doing that. Matter of fact, there's passive house design in the energy code. You can do that all day long. That's not a requirement, but it's there. So I do feel that is an important point to make. Just because the delay doesn't mean you're not going to get these proposals or projects in that meet these standards, because folks want to do this. Other folks are having issues getting to that point. I think we need to address everything in a balanced manner. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, before we continue, I'm going to open this up to public comment, but please keep in mind, those during public comment, that the items that were brought up during public comment on items not on the agenda, if you spoke to this previously, please do not be repetitive in nature. If you have something new to bring that you did not bring up before, then that would be germane to public comment for this specific item. If it is repetitive, we will move to the next public comment, okay? With that, Andrea, go ahead.
Perfect, thanks. Andrea from BIAW again. I do have new information to share. This week, the California Utility Commission released a study that described the impact of full electrification will have on their state's grid. And that comes with a price tag of $50 billion by 2035. And I asked you in a year when our governor had touted going big on affordable housing instead of going home, it's almost comical that a delay would not be considered, as a lot of these codes actually single-handedly ruin any of the effort that our legislature has made to address the affordable housing crisis. We would definitely love to have some sort of, resolution on this today, but, we understand if that has to wait until Wednesday. I would recommend, as another piece of, new information, is that when updates to the SBCC's website, whether that's posting insert pages or, you guys do a very great job of telling the public about upcoming meetings, but some of those documents that are being posted are not necessarily being brought forth to the public in a very transparent way. So I think that there is the ability to use GovDelivery or some other sort of communication method that can help keep the industry abreast of some of these changes and to have them weigh in. It's really important to point out that the people that are members of the Building Industry Association of Washington are the people that are out there building the homes, and they're on the front lines. And that is the reason why they're not able to show up to some of these meetings. I have a list of 80 something responses from the survey that we had from our code classes. And oh my goodness, there are so many concerns that people want to share with us and with the SBCC. Now, I would ask you guys this. I'm getting completely inundated with questions and comments. I don't have the technical expertise. So if this council wants to take on those questions, I'm more than happy to, forward those emails and those phone calls on to either the council staff or the counselors directly. So just let me know how you would like me to proceed. Thanks so much.
George, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate basically by agreeing with pretty much.
George, will you
most
please
of the-
speak closer into your microphone, please?
Can you hear me now?
That's a little better. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say I agree with 90% of the argument for delaying the codes in relating to the energy code. The one thing I would like to add to the 1% comment is that this is also one state in the country, one small piece of the nation. Delaying until November is going to have the same effect on the energy crisis and the climate change as implementing it now. It's going to have absolutely no effect. To the other codes, yeah, here in Sumner, we are really scratching our head about the WUI code. We're having a very hard time understanding it. And when we had the WABO annual business meeting in April, we voted, with the exception of one nay, unanimously to request, if there was a vote, that the vote be for delaying the codes, mostly so that we could get our heads wrapped around what the codes are requiring, largely because several of the amendments were not even available. And in fact, the energy code only became available to us this week. That's all I got.
Okay, Larry, go ahead.
I'd like to remind you guys that, we've heard how bad natural gas is by a lot of people, but I'd like to remind you that you guys on the council voted to put vent-free gas fireplaces in all rooms and buildings, okay? And there was extensive study done back then on the effects of what natural gas would have by doing that, and it was none. And then I've submitted documentation from the EPA about the people with asthma, and their documentation with all the testing the EPA has done has said that there is no problems with natural gas on gas stoves and freestanding stuff inside a building. And I've given you that information. Okay. So this cry for that natural gas is such a bad thing is not true. Okay. And I've handed you the documentation. Your own council in the past went through all the documentation and came up with the same conclusion that I've just come up with. Thank you.
Okay, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I commented earlier. I appreciate you asking for some more public comment here. I just wanted to add some context on our concerns about the WUI specifically. As a development firm going through preliminary plat and construction document review and final plat processes, it's been my experience in speaking with other jurisdictions that the planning departments and community development departments do not have it on their radar how this is going to interact with tree retention requirements, landscaping requirements and whatnot. And so we see a big hang up in that part of implementation of the WUI associated with the 2021 building code. And I agree with the sentiments communicated by Council Member Doyle. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further public comment? Okay, with that, we're going to go back to our council members. Damon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear that my requested delay has zero to do with any pending legislation, or excuse me, pending legal action or letters or petitions. The special meeting on the legal side of things, that's separate. The motivation for this request comes from the feedback I've got from building officials and builders, and people that have taken time out to become more educated, only to become more confused. We just need time. Building officials, WABO had voted for it unanimously, as you heard, -1 vote. BIW has 100% back to this effort. We just need time to get people educated in order to go out and do this correctly. That's all we're asking for. Just give us some time. Thank you.
Chell, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, I don't see why we'd even vote on this today, considering we're getting more information next week. I think we need to make comprehensive decisions, and making something on one day and then getting new information a couple days later, a few days later. I guess I don't understand the logic of it. I am very sympathetic to training, and especially on the WUI code, because it is new for a lot of people. I guess from the training perspective, I'd be willing to delay the code a month, possibly 2. I think training needs to happen. And it sounds like it's not happened. I'm sympathetic to some of the training needs out there, and especially for the WUI code, because it is so new. So, but I think 120 days if the codes have been in CR 103 format for many months, and if they're going to be enforced July 1, if they're out for 6 months before that, and the training doesn't occur, it seems like adding 4 months to 6 months is we missed the training target by a long ways. A month or 2, I can see that as reasonable. Okay, yeah, we need a little bit more training. A few people need to get trained, and the trainers need to be able to have more time to have more sessions for people, because it sounds like they're fairly full. But 120 days seems like, way too long, and from the perspective of training, from what I've heard.
Hey, Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, everyone. Like I said, I'm on the fence, but the training is an issue. There has been training. WUI code has been mentioned. As you all know, my name is all over that proposal. I have provided training. The WABO training I did 7 hours. There was well over 60 people in that room. I know that I've done other webinars. Andrea from BIW brought up the emails. I've been answering as many as I can. I'm inundated with emails about the WUI code. So I understand where Damon's coming from, and I understand the concern of the community. It is an issue, and that is complicated. And there are jurisdictions that have not coordinated with the other internal departments to effectively say how that's going to work. You've heard it's confusing. It's problematic. It is. I taught the class, and it's still confusing to me. We're still having to work through process to determine how to implement it. If the other council members are on board, I'd be happy to forward some of the WUI code emails to them and let you folks answer it. You walk through the code with these individuals and explain how to enforce it and use it, and that'd be extremely beneficial. I'm one person. I could use that help. And so it sounds like you all have a clear understanding of what it is. what it takes to implement and enforce it and use it. And so it'd be great if you helped with those inquiries. So I look forward to hearing or seeing a raise of hands from those folks I can send those emails to and possibly assist me with some training. Thanks.
Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I am on the sort of side that feels like we have heard this already last month. There's not a whole lot to add in terms of what we're hearing. I do think next week we're going to learn more. And so, but you know, it's like, I get the, and I am sympathetic about the training too, but I also understand that a couple of months isn't just training, it's permits too, right? They will get submitted as well under the 2018 code. And I also don't think that construction starts on July 2nd for a lot of this stuff. So, you know, this is a 3-year cycle. We've had lots of time. I know it's complicated, but I think we've been through this process. We knew it was coming. 3 months isn't going to prevent training from happening after it takes effect either. And I do think that there will be permits that are submitted during that 3 months process that go forward for years. So that's why I'm going to be voting not to extend. Thanks.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have a process question. So my understanding is we're being asked with the authority of rulemaking granted by the power of the legislature to do an emergency rule to delay the implementation date. That could be subject to a petition, which would then be subject potentially to a veto power by the governor. Doesn't the governor also have the simple power to delay this on his own without a rulemaking process?
Are you directing that question to me, Todd?
I think you're well qualified. Thank you.
Well, I might dispute the well qualification. I'm not it's interesting. I've never looked in that question. I should be clear though that I'd be skeptical if the governor had a direct authority to delay the implementation of the code. It's not his code; it's the council's code. Governor does have broad sort of emergency powers that he can affect through proclamations because of an emergency, health emergency, public health, or fires, earthquakes, and those sort of things. And potentially you could use that authority with respect to building codes. I don't believe that that's what you're talking about here, though. So I think council members should assume that at least that the governor's role on any emergency rules has been demonstrated in the past, that the governor has vetoed extensions of emergency rule extensions of delays on the energy code during the COVID situation. But I don't believe he would have similar authority to delay the implementation unilaterally.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further comments from council members before we take a vote? Okay, the motion on the table is to delay the implementation of the 21 codes for 120 days beginning on June 30th. Did I capture that okay, Damon? Okay. All right, with that, we'll do a roll call.
Chell Anderson,
No.
Jay Arnold,
No.
Todd Bayreuther,
No.
Micah Chappelle,
Yes.
Damon Doyle,
Yes.
Tom Handy,
Yes.
Matthew Hepner,
No.
Craig Holt,
Yes.
Ty Menser,
No.
Pete Reiki,
No. Sorry.
Katie Sheehan.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, motion fails.
Point of order.
9 or 7 against.
4-7.
Okay. Okay, Micah, go ahead.
Did Justin vote? I didn't hear his name.
Oh,
Is he a
that's my
voting
bad.
member?
He was not here at our last roll call. If he's here now, we can take his vote.
I've been traveling from Minnesota to Nashville today, so I vote no.
So no. So 4-8.
Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Good catch. Okay, is there any other business that council would like to bring up? Okay, Jay, go ahead.
Just a question for staff. There were some interpretations that were posted on the website that weren't on the agenda. Were those FYI, or do we need to take action?
Well, I guess we need to take the action if the council wish to do that. These interpretations, they were discussed at the BFP meeting, but again, we didn't have a quorum. And one option is, again, the council to refer back to the BFP whenever we have the BFP, or the council to take action on these opinions. The opinions were posted on the website, and we can have them on the screen if the council members wants to discuss those opinions.
Micah, go ahead.
I would like to have those discussed. I know one of them has been outstanding for some time, even though there's, yeah, I'd like to hear those.
Okay, let's go ahead and pull those up on the screen.
All right, for the first one, we're gonna bring up an interpretation request from Bellingham regarding 2018 IBC section 3202.3. This has come to the council before and was directed back down to the BFP. And one of the concerns on this one that Stoyan mentioned was that this is a model code section that we do not have any amendments to. And at our last BFP meeting, even though we had no quorum, there was much discussion on this one and many kind of competing views on how this applies to applications within a jurisdiction. And there was really no movement on this one as far as the draft that you see before you here today.
Okay, Micah, do you have comment on that?
Yeah, sure. I was the chair, and we had, Dustin's correct, we had significant discussion on this. There was no consensus. There's many concerns with this, in that committee members didn't agree with necessarily the commentary, which is where most of this answer was derived from, the ICC commentary. Our somewhat direction to the proponents was to kind of go back to ICC, and because this is very project specific to an item in their jurisdiction and would have too many other issues and concerns that would apply to it. So we had no recommendation. I guess the recommendation today would, if we have to vote on this, would be to disapprove and not provide an opinion for this section, and to, again, steer the proponent back to the ICC and let them address it in their jurisdiction as it is project specific.
Okay, thank you, Micah. Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I have a question for you, because when I read 3202.3.3, it appears to allow encroachments of any type above 15 feet, subject, of course, to other zoning codes or other kinds of codes. I don't have access to the commentary version of the IBC, so it's entirely possible that the commentary is quite clear on that. But I guess, I don't have access to the commentary, but it seems like 3202.3.3 in the Washington Building Code would allow projections of floors and exterior walls. At least the answer wouldn't be as clear as no.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion, and that's part of what the issue came down to. Kind of last part of your sentence, is a floor considered a projection? And that's different. It projects into something, but it's not necessarily a projection like a deck or an architectural feature would be a projection. So that you're exactly right. There was a lot of questions on, well, what can you allow? Is it specific to this section? Again, there was no consensus, and we believe this would actually open up to more questions than answers, especially based on the question. It didn't seem like the answer to question number 1 was actually addressing whether or not a floor is a projection, because it just asked about projecting into the public right of way, but not as a projection. They are different.
Yeah, and the 3202.3.3 is about encroachments, and encroachments is previously described in 3202.1 as potentially being structural in nature, which I guess could possibly include floors. Yeah, I guess I see the answer is not no, but some flavor of something other than just no. But yeah, I don't have a clear view on exactly what the answer would be.
Point of clarification,
Go ahead, Damon.
where is this on the website?
This is underneath section 8, other business.
No, not on the agenda. I'm looking under answers and opinions on the website, and I don't see this.
Oh, this isn't an official opinion yet,
This
so
is
it's
not
not posted there.
This is a draft. It's not approved yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And Damon, yes, this was posted for the BFP meeting, but then we advised not to bring it forward to the council, but now we're talking about it. And Shell, yeah, thank you. We would have welcomed your participation also, because I made that same point. I agree. And to me, it was not a hard no. So, and I think, giving more context to the discussion over multiple meetings was that this was a good forum. And I think the applicant was content that we couldn't come to an opinion, but it was a good forum, a public forum, to have this kind of discussion, and then potentially raise it back to ICC level, a model code level, but also that this is complex, and it starts to engage development codes and other public agencies with right of way jurisdiction, so forth. So I learned a lot. It was a good discussion, but we couldn't bring it forward to the council to say we have a strong opinion.
Okay, and before I call on you, Chell, I'll piggyback on that. I think that's the reason there's the definition for approved in all codes, which is acceptable to the code official, which brings it back to the local authority because of the nature of a lot of interpretations. So Chell, go ahead.
Thank you. And then yeah, answer 2, I think, is not explicitly no. And then I think just from looking at past opinions, the second paragraph in answer 2 is maybe the first sentence is helpful, but beyond that, I think it's not helpful. We've tried to keep, I think, our opinions really as brief as reasonably possible. And while it's maybe helpful to explain all that, we typically haven't tried to not have long answers on that. And then for question 3 and answer 3, yeah, I guess if this is going back to the BFP, they can answer it, or if Bellingham is satisfied with the non-answer, then I guess that's fine. But I do hate to not answer questions asked of the Building Code Council or of our committees or tags. So I guess I guess that's it.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, quickly, Shell. I think Roger stated it best, that we believe that we've come to the end of the road with the State Building Code Council on this matter.
Okay.
Did you say Bellingham said that?
Oh, no, council member, Roger Heringa. That's how he summed it up.
Okay. I mean, I guess
just so you know, Chell, the city of Bellingham, who requested this, 2 of their folks were in the meeting, the BFP meeting, and was part of the discussion and thorough discussion. And they were satisfied that we were not going to provide them with an opinion based on these questions, because there was not going to be a consensus and it was more project specific for them than the broad request. And so I think they have gotten what they needed from us as far as the
Okay.
discussion went. And know that we're not going to provide them an opinion.
Okay, have we officially said thank you for the discussion? I feel like we should at least respond to the city in an email as the code council and just say, we consider this a closed matter. And so, yeah, I think that would be helpful just to close it out.
Is this something that opinion needs council action on in order to close it out?
Yes, or the other option is if we request City of Billingham to pull their request for interpretation. Official. I thought they said they would do it. This is, I think
I didn't hear any indication that they would rescind their opinion request. But they did seem to leave the meeting having an understanding and having the broad discussion that we did have, that they maybe have direction how to move on this specific project.
we can follow up with an email to the city and I think
That sounds great. Sounds great,
Okay.
just so we close it out.
Okay, sounds good. So staff will follow up via email and we'll go from there on that. Would we like to go to the next interpretation?
All right, this one is from the town of Woodway and has to do with the WUI code and some of the application of the definition of wildland urban interface area / intermix. And I've heard this question more than once, which is if I distill a little bit further than what we have right here is if the wildland urban interface and intermix area was changed and they apply uniformly throughout the across the DNR maps where you have the interface and intermix areas depicted separately, why are there two depictions on the map? There was discussion at the BFP meeting, no quorum. This was workshopped a little bit there. And if we could, it would be nice to get this one out to the town of Woodway. This one's been floating around a while as well.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Micah, go ahead.
So this was also discussed and somewhat modified the answer here from the BFP committee to provide the correct information and accurate information. And if I remember correctly, the BFP committee members that were in attendance, even though we didn't have a quorum, fully supported the answer in this opinion. And with that, I would like to make a motion that the council support this opinion and publish it on our site.
Okay, Todd, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion from Micah and a second from Tom. Okay, Micah, would you like to speak further to your motion?
Sure, thanks. This is a good question. Yeah, it does come up. The interface language is what we call model code or base code language. And we did modify the title of the definition in chapter 2 of the Wildland Urban Interface Code to include intermix because the requirements of the Wildland Urban Interface Code apply whether you're titled interface or intermix. The only reason they're different is based on vegetation or distance to vegetation, but the application of the WUI code to those sections are the same. So it was just a designation on a map and we were trying to provide something in the definition to help guide that. So it's one and the same for the application of the code, and that's what we are answering here as the opinion from the SBCC.
Thank you, Micah. Tom, would you like to speak to your second?
Just that, to me, the answer sounds really clear and unambiguous in any way, so I support it.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for further discussion. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in, oh, go ahead, Micah.
I apologize. Were we supposed to open this up for public comment before I?
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay.
Or
thank
I
you.
made a motion? I apologize.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Is there any public comment related to this other business as far as the interpretation goes for the WUI and the intermix? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Micah. Okay, with that, we'll do, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries.
And then our third opinion request comes from the town of Sumner. Has to do with the IRC with the adult family home section 330.7. That section is titled Fire Apparatus Roads and Water Supply for Fire Protection. But the question is to do more with fire apparatus roads and whether they are required for landlocked properties served only by an easement. And we had some discussion at the BFP committee with no quorum, workshopped this document a little bit, and you have what you have in front of you here as what came out of that discussion.
Okay, is there, Micah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know if you needed me to jump in there as the BFP chair. Yeah, just what Dustin said. I imagine we could open up for public comment before I make a motion. It's pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
Excellent. Any public comment on this item? George, go ahead.
Let me give him permission to talk. There he goes.
Okay, George, you should be able to turn on your mic.
Yeah, since I'm the one that asked this question, I figure I can clarify what I was trying to get to make sure that the question's posed correctly. So we have what they call pipe stem lots in Sumner for landlocked properties, and they, without consulting fire, originally had proposed that those have only a 15-foot wide easement provided when the plats are divided. And so the question becomes, because we have one that wants to become an adult family home now, and it's 170 feet to the structure from the main roadway, is the code's intent that it would have to have a fire apparatus roadway provided based off of whatever was adopted, in this case by us, which we just adopted the requirements straight out of the IFC, which is anything over 150 feet has to have the turnaround, and that the driveway needs to be 20-foot wide access.
Okay, thank you, George, for that information.
Hopefully that helped.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Any further public comment? Okay, with that, we'll take it back to council. Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, George. Yeah, if that's what you've adopted, then that's what you would need to enforce. And that is the intent of this section, that for the fire apparatus. There are jurisdictions that don't adopt straight out of the fire code, and they have something less, or they don't require it. Maybe they just have a driveway, and that would be their locally adopted standards. So if that's your locally adopted standard, my understanding and the intent of this section would be that's what you enforce. And that's what the code language kind of says, is meets the requirements of the locally adopted standard. So that's our answer.
Okay.
And do I need to make a motion for